It's Nightmare Night, Zenex, by MlpHero. A Nightly Visit. It's Nightmare Night, Zenex. The unreformed nymph squealed and hopped out of bed before turtle shelling, trademarked. The other unreformed changeling, Hive Hunter, blinked, his red eyes staring at the shell. He chuckled and picked it up, staring into it. He smiled upon seeing a pair of blue and green eyes staring back at him. Come on out, Zenny boy. The nymph began shaking with fear. Hive chuckled and carried the nymph over to the dresser drawer. He set the shell in the drawer and began looking through it. Come on, Zenny boy, Hive said, grabbing his costume. Don't you want some candy? Zenex's turtle head poked out. Well, yeah. Hive began changing into his costume. Well, come on, let's go. Zenex shook his head again. Besides, Hero's bringing me some candy. Hive chuckled. Aw, that's no fun, he fake pouted. Zenex whimpered slightly. Hive looked at him. What's wrong? Vexer, Zenex mumbled. Oh, right, Hive sighed. Vexer. He was a fairly mean nymph. Okay, fairly and mean aren't the best choice words for Vexer. During Chrysalis's reign, he got whatever he wanted when he wanted. He was practically king of the nursery and king of the nymphs. Only his close friends didn't fear him. It was quite easy to get on his bad side. Heck, even the smallest thing, like taking the last bite of food, was punishable by getting beat to kingdom come. Zenex was one of, if not the, main target. Zenex had always been different. He was insecure about himself. War hero or not, nothing stopped Vexer from bullying the ever-living crap out of Zenex, who they nicknamed Doll Eyes for his heterochromia iridium, aka two very colorful eyes. However, it was around the time of Nightmare Night when Zenex was bullied and pranked the most. Around when Zenex turned 6, making Vexer 8, the latter found out about Nightmare Night, and from there on, along with his friends and other nymphs who didn't like Zenex, they proceeded to play prank after prank on the poor nymph. One of the worst pranks was when they pretended to be a pack of bloodsuckers and a creature that preys on changelings and is very deadly. Zenex nearly wet himself that day. It didn't help that Hive had PTSD and hated seeing kids getting hurt. His story was quite long, but it had to do with the Battle of Cyrus Hollows. But due to the PTSD, Hive couldn't do anything to stop Vexer, as he didn't want to go through the pain and regret of hurting another child. Zenex couldn't blame him. It was his problem, not Hive's. Soon, Hive stepped out, dressed in old military fatigues. He was holding a prop crossbow and prop dynamite sticks. What do you think, Zen? I'm Captain Foresight from the First Pony Changeling War, and you seem to be him from the Battle of Fort Highline. Hive chuckled, putting a rag around his muzzle that was painted to have red blood splotches on it. Smart kid. Zenex blushed sheepishly. I have my ways. Hive smiled before looking around. So, you're absolutely not going? Zenex nodded. Mine's made up. Hive blinked. Zenex was shy, yes. He didn't like creepy and scary things, yes, but this was free candy. Zen may have been a shy and quiet changeling, but he never backed down from free candy. Come on, Zenny boy, Hive said, trotting over. I can't go out there and grab all the candy without you. Zenex shook his head. Nuh-uh, I'm not leaving this room. Hive raised a brow. But won't Vexer know you're in here? I mean, you can't hide here forever. Zenex opened his mouth to speak, but didn't. Hive was right. Vexer would more than likely know that he was hiding again. But then he smelt something. It smelled sweet, like lavender or cinnamon. This somehow calmed his nerves. He hesitated before speaking. Fine, I'll go. Hive chuckled and smiled. Attaboy. Go on and get changed. I'll go find the others. Zenex nodded and ran to the closet looking for his costume. Hive nodded and left the room. Hive lined up beside the other Fangs. They were all dressed out in their own costumes. A reformed changeling, Pharynx, who was dressed in a general's uniform, looked at the Fangs. So, what are your Nightmare Night costumes? Blue Fang held his head up. I'm a special operations soldier, he chirped, holding his head high. He was decked out in his spec op uniform, as well as some prop equipment. But we're always special operations soldiers, Broken Wing said. Blue blushed sheepishly as his brother stepped up. I'm a bloodsucker. He showed his carapace, which was painted red, and his belly was painted tannish yellow. He also had a red lizard tail. Mitchell was next. I am a black widow spider, he said, showing off his cardboard box costume with a few cardboard legs. That's not very creative, Mitch, Pharynx said. Mitchell narrowed his eyes. Buck you. Next. Then Kydra. I'm an original Wonderbolt, the ones from the first Changeling Pony War. She was wearing a uniform that was dark gray like her chitin, with yellow lightning strikes on her sides and hooves. Pharynx blinked. But you're a black widow. Don't you hate Wonderbolt? Kydra put a hoof over his mouth. Shush. Mantis chuckled and stepped up. I'm a tank pilot, he said, showing off his tan jacket and his tank helmet. But you are a tank pilot, Blue chirped. Shut up. Stinger face-huffed and pushed past them. I'm an insane doctor. He showed his doctor's coat with some red paint on it. He even had his tools. A few nymphs came by, causing Stinger to smirk. He whipped around with his tools and his magic. Are you ready for your operation? They screamed and ran off. Dagger burst out laughing. Good one, Sting, he chirped, stepping up. I'm a killer from that Nightmare Night movie. He chuckled and showed his dark blue-gray jacket and white mask with a brown mane. Then Hive. I'm Captain Foresight during the Battle of Fort Hyaline. He showed his costume. The others oohed at him. Pharynx looked for Zen, who was hiding behind Hive. What about you, Zenex? What are you dressed as? Zen squeaked. You guys are gonna laugh at me. No, we won't, Hive reassured. Promise? Promise, they said in unison. Zen stepped out from behind Hive with a cloud of pink as wide as the night sky. He was dressed as a kitten, he said, his face still blooming with pink. His costume was a kitten with a white pelt. His tail was transformed into a white cattail, and he had fake cat ears and whiskers on. Aww! Zen looked up to see the fangs, awed by his adorableness. He smiled and chirped. Come on, Zenny, let's get us some candy, Kai said. Yay! The fangs happily trotted off towards Ponyville. However, as they did, Zenex heard a soft, sort of cracking sound. It was like the awful sound of a joint being snapped into place, but he ignored it and continued walking. Hero trotted through Ponyville. He was an unreformed changeling with a blue braid and dark blue eyes. He was carrying a sack of candy, and by that, I mean a large sack. Papa Pharynx is gonna be mad. He smiled and looked around. He walked around town, noticing a few games going on. He chuckled at the creatures playing the games. He then heard a few bushes rustling. He chuckled and walked over. Wolfie, you in there? A large gray wolf hopped out. He had his own sack of candy in his mouth. Hero smiled. Hey, Wolf, how's the candy hunt going? Ruff! Hero smiled. Good. Any chocolate? Wolf nodded and dropped the bag. Hero went through it and took out any of the chocolates. He smiled and traded some non-chocolate candies with Wolf. Good, buddy. Hero stood up. Wolf barked and followed Hero. The two walked through Ponyville, then noticed the fangs walking over. He smiled and waved. Hey, gang. Hey, Hero. Zenex trotted over and hugged him. Hero chuckled and rubbed his head. Hey, Zen. Nice costume. Zenex blushed. Thanks. I like your corporal costume. Hero chuckled and showed off his military fatigues, green helmet, and a prop crossbow. The others looked at the prop. Ooh, Zenex said, looking at it. Hero smiled and tossed it to him. Zenex smiled. It looks like the real thing. Hero nodded and took it back. He then reached into his sack. Here, Zen. He tossed a few bits of candy to him. Yay! Zenex grabbed the candy. Hero chuckled as Zenex gobbled the candy up, but then he heard the cracking sound again. It was like a weird rattle. Before he could ask if anyone else was hearing it, Hive sighed. Oh, great. He ain't going to sleep, is he? Hive asked the others. Broken replied, shaking his head. Off we're off, Hivey, Zen said in between his chews, completely forgetting about the sounds. At least it's not lemon pepper. Hive chuckled. I guess. Hero chuckled and walked over to Pharynx, nuzzling him. Papa Pharynx. Pharynx blushed and rubbed his head. Hey, kid, he gritted. Hero blinked innocently, eating his candy. I guess Sumling's not going to bed, eh? Hero said, eating a Hershey's chocolate bar. And you're going to have quite a stomachache and a sore fang. That doesn't matter. Hero buzzed his wings and landed on Pharynx's back. Tough bugs pushed through the pain. Pharynx's eyes did a 360 roll. Hero, I'm not Thorax. If you ride on someone's back, ride Wolf. But Uncle Thorax's carapace isn't as soft. Well, hey! Hero giggled shakily, causing Pharynx to growl. Oh, you're going to be giggling real soon. What's that supposed to mean? Pharynx scooped him up and began tickling Hero's belly. Hero immediately burst out giggling. Pop up, Pharynx. What was that, Hero? Stop it. Why? It tickles. He began squealing and kicking. I know. Tickle, tickle, tickle. Stop. Why? I'll give you some candy. Pharynx slowed down a bit. Do you have Snacks? Yes, a whole lot. How many would you give up? All of them. Okay, then. Pharynx let him up. Hero reached for his sack and sorted out all of the red wrapped snack bars and bites out, and there were a lot of them. Dang, Hero, Pharynx said, watching as they filled a sack of his own. I don't like snacks. What? Most of the group said in unison. Why? I don't like crunchy in my chocolate, Hero shot back. They began grumbling. Hero rolled his eyes. Whatever. Zenex was trotting down door to door, getting more and more candy. Turns out most ponies think blue and green eyes are cute. Who knew? However, as he walked, he felt an uneasy feeling wash over him. He felt like he was being watched. He took a step forward, and the feeling became worse and worse. His breathing became heavier. Before he stepped around the house, he heard rattling sounds again, this time much closer. They sounded like bones. Before he knew it, a long, white skeletal horse with a dark black mane veered its long neck around the side of the house. It looked like a long horse. A very long horse. Part of Zenex wanted to run, but something calmed him down. The familiar smell of cinnamon. The creature neared closer, its bony neck making clicks. Zenex reached a hoof out to it, gently laying it against the creature's skull. "What are you?" The creature clicked again, sounding like Morse code. Zenex didn't understand it at all. Are you hungry?" The creature shook its head. Zenex tried walking around it, but it stopped him. Zenex blinked. Is there something over there?" This time, the creature nodded. Zenex blinked. Is it danger? Is something trying to hurt me?" The creature nodded again. Zenex switched his instinct on, then noticed the green outlines of changelings waiting in bushes. His eyes widened. "Vexer." He looked at the creature. "Is that what you're warning me about? Is he gonna hurt me?" Another nod from the creature. It was at this point that the reformed changeling nymphs looked over, then jumped into the bushes. "Why didn't he chrysalis his mercy?" one of the nymphs squeaked. "Well, what is that thing?" the lead changeling, one of the purple scheme, asked, quite terrified. Zenex smirked. This Vexer is, He took a while, then answered. Long horse." The changelings only needed to hear the clicking bones to begin shrieking in terror before bolting off in the other direction, screaming for their mothers. Zenex giggled and looked at the creature. "I got your name right? The creature nodded, giving a few clicks. Zenex smiled and rubbed his head. "You're not so scary. You're kinda cute," Zenex chuckled. The creature made a few final clicks before disappearing behind the house. It was at this point that Hero ran over. "Hey, Zenex, what are you doing?" Zenex blushed. He looked over to see Vexer and his gang had dropped their candy. "I just scared the crap out of Vexer and his dumb friends," he chirped, running over and scooping the candy into his bag. Hero blinked. "Vexer's pretty hard to scare. How'd you do that?" Zenex looked at the house. He smiled. "Oh, I have my ways." He walked past him. "Come on, we have some candies to devour." Hero smiled. "Yep." He followed him. As they walked, they found the fangs. They were trading candy with each other. Hero smiled and nestled Zenex. He giggled and nestled back. The two began trading candy for their feast later. Zenex and Hero were sprawled out on Hero's bed, twitching around. Their stomachs growled, but not in hunger. "I think I may have busted something," Hero groaned. "Me too." Zenex looked at him. "Where are everyone at?" "Maybe they're in their rooms. I don't know." Zenex crawled over to Hero, wrapping a hoof around him. Hero snuggled closer, yawning. Zenex also yawned. The two had been eating a lot of candy. They were tired, had tooth and stomach aches. They snuggled close, yawning. Night, Hero. Soon they were both asleep. However, as they did, a few pieces of candy and an apple disintegrated from Hero's nightstand. Today's Nightmare Night won't be forgotten, especially by Zenex, who caught a familiar whiff of cinnamon as he drifted off to sleep.